Wow, it's so great to be here and see all your not quite dark enough to see faces. I got a lot of light in my eyes here, so I'm going to trust that you're smiling out there right along with me, and that you are human. That's what I'm going to trust right now too. I hope that's okay. I don't want to discriminate against any robots that might be in the audience. Are there? Let me just see if I can see. Are there any robots in the audience? You're not a robot. You know, and I think this is a really important thing because I think we're getting to a point where the answer to that question is going to be yes. One of these days, like it's going to happen. I'm going to ask that question in a group, and then this little spindly mechanical arm is going to stick up from the crowd, right? And I don't know if I know what's going to happen that day. Like, does the robot come up on stage and take my job and like do the talk? Because that seems to be how we talk about robots and automation and machines in general these days, right? Like it's kind of like with a lot of fear and trepidation about what they're going to do and how they're going to change the world, and they are, for sure. Everything about the human experience is up for change right now due to things like automation and artificial intelligence and robots and whatnot. So the good news about that is that you are here, and I am here, and we're talking about this, and you are awesome women who do tech and digital, and you are thoughtful, and you know a lot about how to make good experiences already. And I'm going to tell you a little in the next 19 minutes or whatever, what I would normally probably say in about 45 minutes to an hour. So buckle your seatbelts. It's going to be a little bit of an accelerated journey here. But the important thing about this is kind of how it's going to feel going into the future. Things are moving fast. A lot of CEOs, like 70 to 80% of CEOs, say that the next 3 years are going to be more critical to their future than the past 50 years have been all along, so combined. So yeah, big changes. But the way I would propose that we deal with the changes that emerging technology brings about is to focus on making human experiences more meaningful. And why I think that's the most important conversation to have with you here today is because I believe that women in general, and just generally underrepresented populations in business, have kind of an edge when it comes to understanding meaning and experiences. And I'll start to explain some of why. But there's a lot of nuancing and subtlety that we all kind of learn to do and learn to figure out as we go. And I think that's going to be your superpower. And I think you're going to bring that to this process of creating these more meaningful experiences through automation, AI, and machines. And what this looks like is that we're going to actually want to use better tech to make business better and use tech to make human experiences better. And in the process, actually make more meaningful experiences at scale. Those are the words that really matter here, because when you think about it, this is all going to accelerate really fast. There's going to be experiences around us that are machine-led and interactive in ways that they are not yet today. Everything we interact with, more than likely, is going to become more and more automated. So it's important that that carries this understanding of human dynamic, of empathy and emotion, which is where you come in. So there's some weirdness about the future of human experiences and how to make them meaningful. And I want to unpack that a little bit for you so that we're not kind of feeling helpless and misunderstanding what the opportunity in front of us is. Let me unpack create meaningful human experiences just a little bit. And so to start, let me unpack human experiences just a bit. When I talk about human experiences, what I mean is in business, when we typically talk about experience, we do it in this very segmented way. We talk about customer experience and user experience and stuff like that, right? In your world, is that kind of how you usually encounter the term experience? Like, it's a very faceted, siloed sort of discussion. But what I find really important to acknowledge about that is that this is us, right? This is all of us are all of these roles in our lives. more or less, like with some exceptions maybe. But we go through the world and we are every single one of these people, in a sense. And so it becomes this kind of realization that if we bring a more holistic understanding of what the human experience is to each of these roles and to each of the contexts we design for and we create for when we encounter these roles, that we bring more of a sense of reality and a sense of context that's actually successful for business, that helps business have a competitive edge and helps humans have a more human-like experience, a more well-rounded, more meaningful, more empathetic, more contextual experience. So let me give an example of what I mean, and it's kind of a silly example, admittedly, but I think when you start thinking about like what does meaningful mean versus meaningless, let's try to imagine that you're running a mattress company, and you want to sell more mattresses because you have to, right? But like let's imagine that you decide you want to get creative, and you hire someone to go stand on a street corner and hand out quarter-sheet flyers that are advertising like a mattress sale. And oh, by the way, you also make sure that person is in a chicken suit. Because, chicken suit. Because it's going to attract attention, right? So what's going to happen? Obviously, we've all been walking along a city street and been handed a quarter-sheet flyer, or someone's attempted to hand us like a quarter-sheet flyer. I live in New York City, so we ignore that sort of stuff with impunity. It's like, no, I don't need to take your stupid flyer. Or you're nice and you take it and you just throw it in the nearest recycling bin or trash can. But this is the kind of meaningless approach to trying to sell more mattresses. It's just about kind of creating a distraction and trying to get somebody's attention at all costs. But what if you took the same idea? What if you thought, all right, well, I want to talk with people on the street corner. I want to get their attention. I want to have that conversation. But instead, I put somebody out there, and let's pretend that instead of these little sorbet cups, that this is coffee that she's handing out. And on the coffee cup, it says, if you'd slept on our awesome Sleeper 5000 or whatever, you wouldn't need this coffee right now. I mean, it's just a silly example, but I hope what it helps to illustrate is that if you want to engage someone as a customer, you might offer them a sale, whereas if you want to engage someone as a human, you will offer them a better sleep. So it's this difference, this subtle difference. And where I find that women and other underrepresented populations tend to be better about understanding this is that we've had to do this math. We've had to do this additional sort of gymnastics work all our lives of trying to figure out what's really going on, what's the story behind the story behind the story. We're trying to account for all these different nuances that are going on. So again, I would say we will deal best with the changes that emerging technology brings about by focusing on making human experiences more meaningful. All right, so let me unpack what I mean by meaningful. This is a big theme in my life and my work. You heard that Katie's great intro, which I'm so amazed every time I hear some of that stuff, because I'm like, wow, that does sound like a lot, and it doesn't feel like it's been that much, but it's just a really diverse set of things. And what's been interesting about that is that all through all of those different kinds of things that I've worked on, the thing that's really been compelling to me is the sense that I want to be, I want to understand meaning. I want to understand what matters. So meaning is what matters, right? Meaning is what is significant. What matters to you, what matters to me, and how, if we're talking about communication, like I'm a linguist by education, if we're talking about how we communicate, it's about what am I trying to say, what are you trying to hear, trying to understand, and then what's the actual thing that passes between us, and how much overlap is there in the intent and what you receive out of that. That's the shared understanding, and that shared understanding is meaning. It's affected by all kinds of things like context, what you brought into the discussion, what kind of baggage you have going into it, what kind of baggage I have going into it, where we are, how well you can hear me, all that stuff. But that's fundamentally what's going on, and it happens too when we're creating human experiences in a digital and technology setting too. And the thing is, whenever I ask people, what do you think makes humans human? There's always these answers like creativity or empathy or love, which are great answers. But to me, the thing that really characterizes humanity is that humans crave meaning. We seek it, we thrive on it, right? Like everything about our most existential puzzles is about the quest for meaning. And if you offer someone meaning, if you offer them coffee that says, like, if you'd slept on our awesome sleeper 5,000, you wouldn't need this coffee, there's a connection there. There's a resonance. There's a sense that, like, oh, you get me. There's relevance here. And that connects deep down. So how many of you are fans of Douglas Adams? Anyone? See a few hands. Yeah, some whoops going up. That's good. So you'll know exactly what I'm about to say. But for the rest of you who are not, there is a part in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where Douglas Adams wrote that the answer to the great question of life, the universe, and everything is 42, right? So there you go. There you have it. You have the answer. Go forth and create meaning. So it's not quite that easy, but I do love that when Douglas Adams was ever interviewed about that in years following The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and people asked him, like, why did you choose 42? He would say, like, he chose it because it's not too high and not too low of a number, and it was just funny. It is. It's silly. It's absurd. But what is really great about that example is that in the years since then, an entire subculture has sprung up of people offering kind of alternative explanations for why 42 actually kind of makes sense. Like, for example, there are 42 letters in the phrase, it's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Right? I mean, I rest my case. No, I mean, obviously that's silly, but there's also like 42 dots on a pair of dice. Right, I mean, I always thought that was like the most sort of throwaway example, but my husband was like, but you could think about like life as a roll of the dice. I'm like, oh, that's good, that's good. It's good. But my favorite, and sincerely, like, I love this example, is that 42 apparently is the Unicode value for the asterisk symbol, which, as you probably know, in computing is often used as a wildcard character, which means it can mean anything. Boom. Yes. But apparently that is just an amazing and beautiful and poetic coincidence. So in the absence of such a unified and concise and beautiful explanation for everything, we have to make meaning the way we always have and always do, which is by attaching different significance to different events based on how and how much we value them. Okay? Good. Okay. No, I mean, sort of making it up as we go along is what I'm saying. And that is that sort of sense of the asterisk 42. We make it up as we go along. And what is exciting to me about that, why I think that's so powerful and so thrilling to think about what we get to do with this next, is that when we think about the future and how uncertain it seems and how robots seem so scary and we don't know what's coming and the CEOs are saying the next 3 years have more change than the last 50 years and all that stuff, what's thrilling about that is we're making it up as we go along, which means that at any given point, we can change that trajectory. We can choose today what the future will be. We make the future. You make the future. So, I will say again, we can best deal with the changes that emerging technology brings about by making human experiences more meaningful. This is why I call myself and have become known as the tech humanist. And the reason for this is that I feel like there's this huge opportunity with technology to bring it back to these human values and really dimensionalize those. But I also feel like it's an opportunity for you to be part of what is kind of a movement around this, to really think deeply about how this affects the work that you're doing and how you could take this back to everything that you're working on and infuse it with more meaning and more human value and more human connection and respect for humanity. So when you see my new book come out 10 days from now, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's very sweet. Yeah, in 10 days, when it comes out, I hope that when you see this title, that you feel like I'm describing you, which I am. I'm describing you, not just me, I'm describing you. Because I want us all to feel empowered to do this, to make technology better for business and better for humans. I want us to make this kind of integrated experience. It's an opportunity to align the objectives as both a business leader or someone who's helping make business decisions and as, a human, because we all are. Like, everybody who's in a business leader role is also a human. And it seems kind of like, why do I even need to point that out? But yet I do. I need to point that out. I talk mostly to executives in most of my keynote speaking and consulting work, and so I'm kind of like always reminding executives, hey, you're human too. When we're talking about collecting data, it's your data too that we're collecting. Like, this is really important that you remember this. So the approach is this kind of both and sort of integrative idea that on one side you're trying to optimize business for more meaning, and on the other side you're trying to optimize the human experience for more meaning. And the more you kind of accelerate what's happening on this side with an understanding of what's meaningful and aligned and strategic, the more likely you are to create good opportunities on this side. And the more you create meaningful experiences over here, the more successful the business is going to be. I think I'm doing this side-by-side gesture in reverse for you. Sorry about that. I hope that made sense. So I've had the opportunity to test this in the work I've done with really big companies, and it works. It works. It works no matter what size company you're working for and with. If you focus on the human experience and making it more meaningful, you will make business more successful, and you make human experience more meaningful. So that's worth doing just for that. This whole integration, both and concept is really important in all this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this Venn diagram, but it's like the best Venn diagram ever. Ever. Because, you have to take what's happening on one side of the equation and what's happening on the other side of the equation and figure out not just how do you do this or that, how do you do them both? How do you achieve what's great about both of them? And you don't get to platypus keytar unless you're doing some serious both-anding. I'm saying. So I've noticed this in a lot of trends, like online and offline are kind of merging more and more, and we have these connected, smart experiences that are integrative. That was what I wrote about in my last book, Pixels in Place, about how you get to this point where you're looking at the data that's being collected in the physical space and the virtual space or the digital space and making sense of those together and creating more integrated, more meaningful experiences for people as they move through kind of both of those worlds together. Because we, humans, are the connective layer between the physical and the digital world. So it behooves us to be very respectful about that. There's also this trend with, the gig economy and the changing cultural and generational expectations of work. So the roles like customer and employee aren't as distinct and black and white kind of as they used to be. Which, by the way, I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently, you can hire people to change your kids' diapers, so that's a thing. Which I don't know if that's peak gig economy, but I feel like in my mind I can go like a layer or two beyond that, which is like a disturbing thought, so let's not even spend any time on that. There's also this trend that as the economy becomes more global and globally connected, that there's also an understanding of the value and importance of local markets and ecosystems. So this is a converging trend also. You see this term glocal, which is a term that I will take neither credit nor blame for, but it exists. And marketing executives love it. So, if you just want to make a CMO's day, just talk about how do you think about the glocal trend? Is that something you're giving a lot of thought to? And they'll be like, yes, omni-channel, glocal. Love these terms. We also have to remember that content is a kind of experience, and that when we're creating experiences for people that are about content, Netflix creating this whole category of binge watching, which didn't really exist in a form of experience until the 2006-2007 timeframe when streaming Netflix became a service. So now there's this whole phenomenon of binge watching, and appointment TV is like a thing of the past. So we change experience with the changing kinds of, or we change the format of experience as those opportunities become available. And there's a great chance to think integratively about that too, about how you conform to new contexts as they become available, how you create new sort of modes of people experiencing and consuming things, while also trying to understand whether you own or give back attention to them. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. Because what this leads me to is this observation. One of the frameworks within my research and work is about recognizing that within the idea of experience, there are these two modes, in a sense. There's nature and there's shape. And the nature you could think of as being like this glass of water, right? Like we have a human nature, a natural need for water. We need to drink water. I could use some right now. But we also can package that, the experience, in ways that become something new unto themselves. So like the shape of the experience can be created and curated. So if I drink my water from this like heavy glass bottle that's like labeled with this minimalistic typeface and all this, kind of feels a little hipster, a little artisan, like I feel cooler than everybody else because I got my heavy glass bottle. But that's just the shape of the experience. At its fundamental layer, I'm still just a human drinking water. So the nature is still there. So the thing is that the shape of our surroundings change, and the shape of our experience changes right along with them. The human experiences we have do evolve, but the shapes change more readily than the nature does. As those contexts evolve, we are still connected with this underlying experience. The shape of how we consume anything is always going to be changing. And that's an important realization as we move through the timeline of all of these automation changes. How many of you can eat a meal without photographing it? Oh, good. All right. Good. There's a few in the room. And I'm not busting on it, because trust me, I just like Instagrammed my food like yesterday, and I took pictures today because it was gorgeous. But if you're presented with a plate of food that's well plated and exciting, you get this opportunity. Oh, excuse me 1 second. Thank you so much. See, that's a shape of an experience that's awesome. And when you're presented with this plate of food that's gorgeous and it looks good, now we have this new way to appreciate it, where we get to take a picture of it and share it with everybody. Thank you so much. But that's a new form of that experience that really didn't exist before. We didn't take pictures of our food in the past unless we were a professional food photographer. It's just not a thing. So we'll deal with the changes emerging technology brings about by continuing to make human experiences more meaningful and connecting to the nature that underlies all these changing shapes. What's really going on there is you're still a human that's eating food. You're still a human that's drinking water, even if it's packaged differently. You already are a meaning expert. You know how to do this. You're a woman, or you're someone who is empathetic enough and cool enough to come to a conference that's targeted at women. So you get it. You get this. And what I'm excited about is that you are going to be creating the next generation of experiences, including machine-driven experiences, because we cannot leave meaning up to machines. Machines don't really do a very good job at it, and machines are what we encode of ourselves. Our values are what we're encoding in machines, are what matters to us. And when machines are left to do it, they're not so good at nuance. It's not really their strong suit. Here's some more of those. So, yeah, we don't want to. This is an image recognition problem that's kind of solved, but this is the kind of thing we're going to see more and more and more of, and we need to be involved in this process. We need to be understanding what's meaningful, so we're not leaving things up to machines to figure out. So we'll use data and technology to scale what is meaningful. Otherwise, we end up as a scenario like this. I don't know if you can read the caption, but it says, "It's getting harder and harder to hold on to my humanity, but wow, is it easy to track my Amazon deliveries." That's not meaningful. My friend Rob Cottingham drew this for me when we were talking about tech humanism. He was like, "I know how to get this across for you." Like, thank you. And just remember that it's our data that we're using, and it's analytics are people. This is the needs and interests and motivations and desires of real people that we're looking at when we use this data to make meaning. I've got to accelerate here. What I want to make sure we're taking away is that everything is changing. It is. And no industry and no company is going to be able to scale successfully without using digitization, digital transformation, and automation. That's just going to happen. It's going to be happening around us. But humanity won't be successful without meaning. And I'm relying on all of you to take this back and really think holistically and empathetically and in a full context and awareness of what is relevant and meaningful, and use that asterisk thought to create meaning, because we create meaning out of everything. And I'm very happy to have shared this with you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.